In the Horn of Africa, one tiny country controls the economic lifeline of a nation 10 times its size. For decades, almost all of Ethiopia's trade has passed through a single gateway, Djibouti. Every container, every fuel shipment, nearly every import and export, but now something is changing. New ports are emerging across the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, and if Ethiopia succeeds in breaking its dependence on Djibouti, it could reshape the balance of power in the entire Horn of Africa. So the real question is, why is Djibouti suddenly nervous about Ethiopia's next move? In this video, we uncover the growing port competition surrounding Ethiopia, Africa's second most populous country and one of the continent's fastest growing economies. For decades, Djibouti has been Ethiopia's economic gateway to the world. But today, Ethiopia is searching for new access to the sea, new ports, new trade routes, and possibly even its own coastline. Behind the scenes, regional powers, global investors, and neighboring states are all watching closely. Because if Ethiopia changes its port strategy, the entire economic map of the Horn of Africa could shift. To understand this story, we need to go back 3 decades. In 1993, the small territory of Eritrea gained independence from Ethiopia. That single event transformed Ethiopia overnight. It went from being a country with multiple ports to becoming the largest landlocked country in the world. Before independence, Ethiopia relied heavily on the ports of Assab and Massawa. But after relations between the two countries deteriorated, especially during the Eritrean-Ethiopian War, those ports became inaccessible. So Ethiopia had to find a new solution. That solution was Djibouti. Over time, nearly 95% of Ethiopia's trade began flowing through Djibouti's ports. Highways were built. Railways were constructed. One of the most important projects was the Addis Ababa-Djibouti Railway, connecting Ethiopia's capital to the sea. For years, this system worked. Djibouti prospered. Ethiopia maintained access to global markets. But this arrangement also created a massive dependency. And dependencies in geopolitics rarely last forever. Several key players are involved in this unfolding story. At the center is Ethiopia itself. With over 120 million people and a rapidly expanding economy, Ethiopia's need for trade access is enormous. The government has repeatedly emphasized that reliable sea access is a strategic priority. For Ethiopia, it is about economic security. Then there is Djibouti. Despite its small population, Djibouti sits in one of the most strategic locations on Earth, right next to the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, a narrow maritime choke point connecting the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean. Ships carrying goods between Europe and Asia pass through this corridor every day. Djibouti has turned geography into opportunity. Its economy relies heavily on port services, logistics, and transit trade, much of it linked directly to Ethiopia. Another key player is Somaliland, a self-governing region that declared independence from Somalia. While not internationally recognized as a sovereign country, Somaliland controls an important port city, Berbera. In recent years, Berbera has been undergoing major expansion, and Ethiopia has shown growing interest in using it. Further south, Kenya is also entering the competition. Its ambitious Lamu port project is designed to serve landlocked countries. And finally, global players like China, the United Arab Emirates, and Turkey have invested heavily in ports and infrastructure. The entire economic map of the Horn of Africa is shifting. The question is, who will come out on top? Because controlling ports in this part of the world means controlling key pieces of global trade. Why are these ports so important? The answer lies in geography. The Horn of Africa sits next to one of the busiest shipping corridors in the world. Every year, thousands of cargo ships pass through the Red Sea en route to the Suez Canal. This route connects Europe with Asia and the Middle East. It is a critical artery for global commerce. Now consider Ethiopia's position. It is the largest economy in the Horn of Africa, one of Africa's fastest growing markets. Everything from fuel to construction materials must travel through a port, and every kilometer of transport matters. But for Djibouti, this also means something else: competition. If Ethiopia can shorten trade routes or reduce costs, the impact on its economy could be enormous. For years, Djibouti enjoyed a near monopoly on Ethiopian trade, but that monopoly is now under pressure. Ethiopia has been exploring multiple alternatives. One option is expanding access to Berbera in Somaliland. The port has already been upgraded with international investment, including major funding from the UAE. New highways linking Berbera to Ethiopia's eastern regions are also under development. Another option is Kenya's Lamu port, part of the massive Lapset Corridor project. It's designed to connect East Africa through new highways, pipelines, and railways. And then there is the most controversial possibility of all. Ethiopia has openly discussed the idea of direct sea access. Some Ethiopian officials have argued that a country of its size should not remain permanently landlocked. That statement alone sent shockwaves across the region. Neighboring countries began asking, what exactly does Ethiopia intend to do? Could it negotiate access to a coastline? Could it lease port territory? Or could it push for something even more dramatic? These questions have created tension across the Horn of Africa, especially in Djibouti. Because if Ethiopia successfully diversifies its port options, Djibouti could lose a major portion of its economic lifeline. So what might happen next? Several possible scenarios are emerging. Scenario 1. Diversification. The most likely outcome is that Ethiopia gradually spreads its trade across multiple ports. Djibouti would still handle a large portion of shipments, but others would take increasing shares. This would reduce Ethiopia's dependency while maintaining regional cooperation. Scenario 2. Strategic partnerships. Another possibility is deeper infrastructure partnerships. Ethiopia could invest directly in port development in neighboring countries. In exchange, it would secure long-term guaranteed access. This model has already been used around the world, and it could transform Ethiopia into a major investor. Scenario 3. A geopolitical shift. The most dramatic scenario would involve Ethiopia securing some form of sovereign coastal access. Even limited territory or a long-term lease could change the geopolitical landscape. But this path would be extremely complex. Regional stability would become a major concern, which is why many believe diplomacy will remain the primary path forward. For decades, Djibouti has been the gateway to Ethiopia, a small country sitting at the center of a huge economic network. But the Horn of Africa is changing. New ports are rising. New trade corridors are forming. And Ethiopia is searching for greater control over its economic future. Djibouti may still remain Ethiopia's main partner, but the era of one gateway, one route, and one port may be coming to an end. And in geopolitics, when trade routes change, power usually follows.